Psychedelic therapist Veronika Gold and Eric Sienknecht, welcome to Shrink Wrap Radio.
Thank you.
And also welcome to my son, Jonathan Van Nuys, who you know well and who's going to be on this interview with us.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So I'm glad to have you all here. Glad to have you in my co-pilot seat, Jonathan, to help us get along. So, so Eric and Veronika, you two are founders of San Francisco Polaris Insight Center. We'll be talking about the center more, but maybe just a little thumbnail to start with. Tell us about the center.
Yeah, great. Delighted to be here. And so we are co-founders of Polaris Insight Center together with our colleague, Dr. Harvey Schwartz, and originally as well, two other founders. And so we started the Polaris in 2018, and it came from all of us co-founders meetings through the MAPS MDMA-assisted psychotherapy training. So we were
MAPS,
all
yes, yeah,
therapists there, and there was just kind of this way how we met and realized we had so many values and vision in common, and then some of us started working with ketamine in other settings and in other clinics, and then we decided to come together and start Polaris, and so that's been almost 4 years ago now. Yeah,
great. And what are the range of oh no, before that I got my list of questions here. Tell us something about your backgrounds for doing this work. And that'll be Eric and Veronika that question goes to.
So yeah, I'm a clinical psychologist, have a private practice in San Francisco and one of the co-founders of Polaris. I have had a long-standing interest in the healing through non-ordinary states of consciousness. And I am also trained psychoanalytically in my kind of graduate years. And then I did a postdoc specialization in treating chronic pain for a couple of years. And so that's kind of my brief background, and then got involved with MAPS and the MAPS training in around 2016. And
yeah, you said something like you had a long-standing interest in non-ordinary states. I don't remember the wording, but
of consciousness.
Yeah. And when did that start? What was the first thing that tickled you in that direction?
Well, I'll just share that I struggled with depression in my late teens and early 20s, and was seeking out different ways to combat the depression. And I had a LSD experience when I was a young man, and it was in a very supportive setting. It was actually in my home, and my mother was my guide.
Wow.
Amazing.
And I had a mystical experience, and it profoundly changed my outlook on life, my relationship with myself, and my future interests. I was, after that experience, was so hungry to understand what that experience is all about. I was reading spiritual texts and mystical poetry and psychedelic research, and trying to really kind of integrate that into my worldview, which did not include experience of familiarity with non-ordinary states before that time. And so so that was the launch pad. and then
you must have an extraordinary relationship with your mother. I've never heard of that kind of. Most of us, when we got involved with psychedelics, it was sort of a very secretive thing,
Yes.
in terms of parental involvement or other authorities. And so to me, maybe this is a modern story since I go way back.
It's a nice story, and it's a hopeful story, and a way, a kind of a way or a picture of what it could be like to have a more enlightened approach to using psychedelics and parenting with psychedelics, and talking about set and setting and preparation. She kind of covered all of those bases, and which led to just this really safe and profound experience.
I would ask
beautiful.
you more questions. Yeah, it is beautiful. And I would ask you more questions about your mother, but I want to get on to Veronika and let her have an opportunity to tell us about how you got into all this.
Yeah, so I come originally from the Czech Republic. And so I grew up under the communist regime. And
Wow.
when I was a teenager, everything, shifted after the, fall of the Soviet Union. And a lot of therapists and researchers and people who were outside of the Czechoslovakia came back for conferences and offerings. And so when I was 16, almost 17, I had the opportunity to go to a transpersonal conference where I saw Stanislav Grof and other presenters, and that sparked my interest and went through my own personal healing of personal and really collective trauma that I lived through, mostly using holotropic breathwork. And so, the holotropic breathwork facilitators as well talked about, Stan's work and using non-ordinary states and psychedelics for mental health healing. And that, led to my interest of becoming a psychologist and coming to California, where I knew Stan was teaching at the CIIS. And so then I ended up going to CIS, getting my degree as a psychotherapist here. And, still for about 10 years, I specialized in the treatment of trauma. I got a lot of different trainings in somatic work, in EMDR, and, just kind of held this possibility of one day working with non-ordinary states. And, my clients would do maybe breath work and come to, sessions with me in psychotherapy. But then it was, thanks to MAPS, I was able to start working with MDMA and then kind of envision and, co-founded Polaris and being able to work with ketamine-assisted psychotherapy, really with the same principles as is in holotropic breathwork, or as we've been trained in MAPS. And then, we were trained as well with Dr. Phil Wolfson. And so that kind of led me. So it was as well lifelong interest in my own personal healing, and then this possibility that came together.
I'm feeling healing just hearing these stories. And I think we need to make sure that all listeners and viewers are aware that MAPS is an acronym for the Multidisciplinary Association for the Study of Psychedelics. Do I have that right?
Yes.
Jonathan, why don't you take the next question?
Oh, I was just going to say that's really interesting and phenomenal that you both were introduced to and got interested in psychedelic-assisted therapy from a young age. And I think maybe it's becoming more usual, but I think most teenagers just are given it in a party kind of setting, which is maybe not the best setting. So it sounds like you were both very intentional from the beginning. And Veronika, did you actually, when you were in the Czech Republic, did you actually meet Stan Grof?
Yeah, so I did, I did few holotropic breathworks with him. And, I think as many people, I think he's been the most influential person in my life. And really, wow. I owe him and his legacy, where I am today and what I'm doing, and just his, really just revolutionary thinking and introduction of the maps of consciousness and, the way of working with these states has just impacted me, very much. And thinking, it just a couple of days ago, there has been a full day of talks of people, kind of honoring Stan Grove's life, and
really?
just it was
Wow.
beautiful to see, and of course know how many people have been impacted, but highlighting, the differences between the Western psychology and today, and and so I think kind of what we've been talking about, it, one of the things is really the importance of personal work and knowing yourself and working with non-ordinary states in order to be able to work with others. And just every time I met Stan, it's I think as well, besides his brilliance, it has just been his heart and openness and curiosity that stayed with me, that he really made space for people and be truly interested in them. And so I've met him many times, and I'm so grateful for each of those encounters.
I want to let people know that I did an interview with Stan many years ago, and you can find it if you go to my website, I think. So, Jonathan, more.
I was just going to say, maybe I should let people know that I actually do some work with Polaris too, as an RN, giving IM injections. And when I first came there, actually for my, I'm calling it an internship for CIIS, I felt like it was a very magical place. It feels more like a home to me than a clinic. And I could feel the energy right when I walked in. So I just wanted to ask you both, what do you think makes Polaris Insight Center so special and unique?
Yeah, Jonathan, I always feel a little bad for the nurses that come in, because ketamine-assisted psychotherapy is a medical procedure. And so we have medical staff administering injections, and they come in for a short period of time, measure blood pressure, do the injection, and then they leave. And so like you miss out on the meat of, and the excitement of the work in a way. Although I'm glad to hear that you really kind of resonate with the vibes that that we create in the clinic. And I think it does have a lot to do with the setting, like creating this like safe, comfortable nest in which people can feel can fully surrender to the experience, and with kind of minimal medical apparatus and procedures, so that they can feel like they're in psychotherapy really. I don't know, I fantasize that we've done hundreds of ketamine sessions and MDMA sessions as well in the same clinic through MAPS. And I just have this, I like to think that we're like generating and creating this morphogenic field, so to speak, of like good vibrations. And not that all sessions are like magical and amazing, and but that overall I think we're doing really good work, and people really have just good associations with the space.
Yeah,
I assume, I'm sorry, go ahead, Veronika.
Yeah, thank you. I think just really want to add something to this, that we thought about it really came from our friendship, like a deep resonance and friendship of the five of us when we started the clinic. And people who started working with us kind of felt that same resonance and interest and respect for these states. And I oftentimes feel that it is a place for people who are coming to heal, but it's as well a place for growth and transformation for all of us. And that there are these layers of holding, that they're the medical doctors like holding the prescription and the medical part, and the therapist hold the process, but that there is not sometimes enough just appreciation of the nurses. And so I as well, kind of, Jonathan, you being here, want to kind of have that opportunity that we talk about it so much, like what an important part you guys play, and that it's something what sometimes is the most anxiety provoking for the patient or the client to come and receive the medicine. And that I feel like you and the other nurses have such a warm and calm presence that kind of add to holding the space. And so it's just this kind of alchemy of all of us, and the intentionality of the work that I just have so much gratitude for everyone that we are working together.
Thank you.
Yeah, I imagine you're aware that Jonathan has had a range of experience with the other organizations in this space as well, and I believe has had some experience both in the therapeutic side of it, as both participating in that part, and also has been a recipient of it, so that he's got a good sense of that space that you're talking about. Have I represented you fairly, Jonathan?
Yeah, very much. Thank you. And speaking of the space and the energy there, one other question I had is you have a dog, a beautiful standard poodle named Chloe, who I think brings a great energy. And I've been interested to see that some clients ask for her presence, and they want her there. And I remember coming in one time to give an injection, and there are the two chairs in front of the couch, and she's in one looking like the co-therapist to me. And I just think that's
Wow.
really great. And I think dogs maybe exist in that sort of space, that ketamine space in a way, or have that kind of consciousness. And I just wondered what your thoughts were on, what Chloe brings, what animals and dogs can bring.
Yeah, what a sweet question. And Chloe, I've had her, and she's been coming to sessions since she was 3 months old, and so she
Wow.
has really by now witnessed thousands of psychedelic-assisted sessions, and is very attuned to the process of the patient. And so if there is a patient who maybe doesn't really like animals, she might stay far away, and then if but then she can come closer to those who like her, and many times kind of supports them, and she when they have anxiety. And it's in some way like a really good therapist, we talk about intrusion versus abandonment. Like, we don't want to intrude to kind of stop the process or soothe the person, but then as well, we don't want to abandon them, that they feel overwhelmed and alone. And so she does that. And she kind of, if they're having a hard time, she just sits next to them. And so she's like, I am here with you. I see you're having a hard time, but just stay with it.
Wow.
And so, yeah, she's been really a sweet addition to our clinic.
I'm reminded of a story that I think is relevant here. I first experienced psychedelics when I was in graduate school, doctoral program in Ann Arbor, Michigan, and it was an underground experience. It was not legal, and this was a time of great personal experimentation and exploration. And so one night I was on a psychedelic. I don't even remember which one, but it was nighttime. I was walking around the town of Ann Arbor, and this dog started following me, and I just had this wonderful bonding experience with this dog. We looked into each other's eyes, and I just noticed that he kept following me wherever I went. And later, as the sun came up, I remember it was kind of already starting to be light, and I'm walking down the street, and some guy came up to me and said something like, "Hey man, are you tripping?" And I got a little paranoid, why are you asking that? And he says, well, the dog is with you. And it turned out this dog was well known among people who were involved with psychedelics, because the dog was attracted to them. The dog was getting more attention, better quality of attention than evidently, or dogs in general, normally get.
What a sweet story.
Yeah. It was a wonderful bonding experience. Jonathan has told me that you have a training program, so it's not just treatment, but also you do training. Uh, what would you like us to know and our audience to know about your training program?
Well, we trained initially with Phil Wolfson and Jelaine Andrews, and their model of CAP and the way that they train was based on their work in the MDMA trials with MAPS. And the MAPS model kind of was started by Annie and Michael Mithofer, and that model was based on their work with Stan Groff and holotropic breath work. So there's this lineage that we're kind of continuing in our work. And some of the principles of our approach is of this approach that we kind of all share is like, really honoring the inner healing intelligence of the patient, and being really letting that guide the process. So we talk about a non-directive approach to psychotherapy. We don't have a particular manualized approach in terms of like applying certain technique like EMDR or IFS or this or that. Although we do use various principles and practices from other traditions in the work, but the main focus is really protecting and holding the space so that the patient feels safe and can surrender and can connect with their inner healing intelligence. So in our training, that's something that we really highlight and talk about and teach and model. And then another principle that Veronika mentioned earlier was just the vast array of non-ordinary states of consciousness that ketamine and music can help us access. And so, it's this non-pathologizing approach to non-ordinary states, that these are dimensions of consciousness that we all have access to under certain conditions. In early psychedelic research, and even now, psychedelics are referred to as like psychomimetic. They mimic or simulate the experience of psychosis. This is like a pathologizing view. Yeah. And we're trying to kind of like create a new narrative where these states, these out of body experiences, near death experiences, mystical experiences are not pathological. They're an aspect of consciousness and that we all can access. And so those are a couple of the principles that we really teach about.
Yeah, and it came really just grew out of our work because where we have this way of collaborating with the primary therapist of our clients. So all our patients have a primary therapist outside of Polaris. And we were finding that many of them didn't understand the work of ketamine-assisted psychotherapy, and so the
therapist didn't understand.
Exactly, they didn't know what their client was going to go through.
Yeah.
And so that was the beginning of the training, which has really developed over the last 3 years. And so the kind of training as a whole, it's a 10-module training, but people don't have to take all the modules. So it's a 10 webinars that go from the introduction to the guiding principles to details of the ketamine-assisted psychotherapy, including dosing and medical part of the training. And then it talks about issues of transference and countertransference, integration process and integration challenges, somatic work, how to work with addictions, how to work with trauma. And then we offer a day where people have experience with the setting and the therapy without the medicine. So there, people who are new to this field haven't had experience working with someone who is wearing eye shades, listening to music, and goes into an ordinary state. So we do kind of a life supervision and a role play examples of how the work looks like. And then we have more advanced modules that go into more, psychodynamic theory and examples of cases, and, bringing other colleagues who've been working in the field for many years to present on their cases. And then, we have a module that is specifically for the medical providers. And then we have a music module, which talks about how to create playlists. And then, the 8th module is called Healing the Healer. And it's really about tending to the self of the therapist and how the therapist can take care of themselves when working with non-ordinary states, which we think is quite different than when you are in a regular, talk therapy. And the last part, that we offer, well, not the last part, but another is that we offer in-person training retreats where people can come and they have their own experience with the medicine, and then they facilitate for another person 2 sessions. And the time around is spent in variety of preparation and integration practices. So we use, movement, yoga, dance, art therapy, sound, healing or sound journeys, inquiry. And so that, we believe that it's almost like becoming through your own experience and being able to witness, over the week, people see maybe 40 different sessions of ketamine. And so that, when they're starting, they already have like a sense and understanding of the variety of experiences people can have. And so this retreat we are providing together with the Rainfall Medicine Clinic in Portland. So the Rainfall Medicine, provides the medical part of the training and holding, and we provide a psychotherapy training. And the last part, which is something new that we, now finally started able to offer, is consultation groups, and so those are 6 months long consultation groups. So the clinicians, as they start working, they do this training, they get the information, maybe they do the practice, but then they have like continuous support as they start working with the patients. And so, and our hope is that after that, people continue in peer consultation, that it's really a journey of becoming. It's not like a one-time training that you do and you know how to do it. We just, continue to learn as we are, working with more and more patients.
Wow, I have to say, this strikes me as such a rich program. It really, I wanted to at some point to ask you, well, what's the special sauce? But really, the special sauce is so rich and so diverse. And my hat's off to you guys. I can see why Jonathan really wanted me to have the opportunity to speak to you and introduce you to the Shrink Wrap Radio audience. I'm very impressed.
Well, and Dave, I would just add that, I think the special sauce in a way is the experience itself. And that's not unique to our training program. There's other training programs that offer experientials. And it's not just that, but it's, these experiential retreats is something that we, have envisioned for a long time. We weren't able to do in COVID. And now we're finally able to provide that. And we've been just so pleasantly surprised at like how much interest there is among clinicians and like having their own experience with the medicine and doing their own personal work and healing. And, it's, it's as I'm sure that the psychedelic experience isn't always just awe-inspiring and beautiful, and it can be really challenging too. That when you kind of lift the lid to the unconscious mind or peek behind the veil, that psychedelics are a non-specific amplifier, to use Groff's term. It amplifies what's already there that may not be conscious until you're in the medicine experience. And then but we have this. We try to create this space where and give people permission to allow whatever is coming up and understand that that's what needs to come up. That's it's coming up for understanding, for processing, maybe to be released, to be expressed. that, trusting that and trusting the inner healing intelligence.
You mentioned COVID, and I was wondering about that. Is COVID over? It's not clear that COVID is over. I actually had fortunately a short dose of it just recently myself,
Oh, gosh.
as did Jonathan. It was kind of running through our family.
Yeah.
So how much of what you're describing is done online, and how much in person? Like, are you back to doing it in your center, or is it all online? Or take us through that. These are challenging times.
Yeah, Eric can talk to, how we develop like an online CAP sessions, but just, around the training, it is so challenging. And we are in this pandemic that really, it presented this challenge, but I think as well opportunity for these trainings. And so one of the things as well is that, all of them, we do the webinars online, and the retreats are in person, and, they've been more spread out and, with precautions and testing and, with masks. So it's a smaller groups than we would do if it was, the safety was established. But, kind of like thinking about, that there is this excitement and need, for people to be trained. And, how do we, how can we highlight the importance, and the lengths of training, and how can we really share these guiding principles? And that, of course, it becomes more challenging on the webinars, but, at least we are trying to have, interaction, have all the webinars live. And, and believe it, recorded webinars and reading is a great supplement, but not a substitute, for a training. And so then it's witnessing of the sessions, that there is something, for years of like a apprenticeship or mentorship. And, it has been more challenging during COVID, even with, training therapists to join our team because of the limits that COVID presented. And, Eric, I don't know if you want to share more about the online sessions, how kind of that has been positive surprise one way.
Yeah, really, it's been amazing. We were considering when COVID first happened back in early 2020, we were, what do we do? Do we need to shut down the clinic for a while, or, but we kind of, in discussions and also with the kind of relaxation of telehealth rules, we were able to actually offer the treatment, start offering the treatments online, and we decided to do that. And so for a couple of years, so we started this online protocol, and we were like able to do intake preparation, experiential sessions at home, and tune in through Zoom, and integration sessions afterwards, all online,
Wow.
sometimes without even meeting the patient in person.
Yeah.
I mean, there's certain extra safety measures and precautions that we need to address when offering the session online. Prep sessions are important to really help the patient, walk the patient through setting up their space in a way that's conducive to having a safe and experience. Also, our screening criteria is a little more rigid with, offering the treatment online. So we don't want to offer, people who are higher risk, active suicidality, active mania, active substance abuse. These are kind of like orange flags for online treatment, as well as in-person treatment. But the standards just a little more stringent. But we've been able to, after a proper and thorough screening, we've been able to offer the treatments online, and that's just really opened up a whole new access for people.
I find myself wondering about the economic model, that there must be issues around that. That's something I've wondered about for this field kind of in general, as it advances, like who can afford it and how much is it going to cost? And then related to that, as I was hearing you talk about doing it remotely, what kind of insurance protection one needs against getting sued because somebody had some kind of a bad experience. Now, I know that's far away from what we've been talking about, and I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on that, but if you want to comment on that.
Veronika, do you want to respond to
Sure.
that?
Yeah. I mean, the economic work and accessibility, it's a big issue, especially if we want to do it in the way that we believe supports the patient the best, and so at Polaris, our sessions are 3 hours long. Sometimes people, can be ready to leave in 2.5 hours, sometimes 3.5 hours, but really the 3 hours seems like the time that's needed for the psychotherapy to unfold, and so it is different that, there are ketamine treatments and ketamine, infusion clinics, which work in a different model, and they're looking for symptom reduction. But here, when we are looking for the process, it's extensive. And so it's, even if the medical portion would not be, and it is a smaller portion of the fee, there is 3 full hours with a psychotherapist. And so it presents a large cost. At this time, there is a minimal coverage by insurance, but there are many groups that are working on showing the cost effectiveness to insurance companies, because even if there is like an upfront sum, even if you would say $20,000 or $30,000, it's a minimal compared to years of medication, and then people who struggle with let's say PTSD or depression, they as well tend to, go to emergency rooms. They have, other somatic manifestations of this. So there is, hopefully we'll be able to see that. There are some insurance companies like Anthea who are trying to create programs to cover psychedelic work. But at this time, it is challenging. And I would say on the east, on kind of east and west coast, the treatments are as well more expensive than, in some other parts of the country, because of as well different, corporate and laws of, connected to business. So, so it is a huge challenge, and we cannot say it's for everybody. There are some ways how to decrease the cost by providing, group therapy. It decreases it maybe, about a half. And, we always have some spots for sliding scale or, pro bono patient, but as well, there is a limit of how many people we can see that way. And then there are clinics like a Sage Institute that has been established where, they train trainees and interns to provide this treatment. And so they're able to provide it for a lower fee. But as well, there is not enough spaces for people who are interested. So it is challenging. And
well, this is an evolutionary moment. And so it's just really fascinating to see what's happening at this juncture in time, and also to think about if everything goes well, because the political matrix also is very important as well. But if things can just evolve in the best possible way, it's fascinating to observe. Jonathan, take us somewhere else.
Yeah, I was wondering what you think. Where do you see the future of psychedelic-assisted therapy going, and ketamine-assisted therapy? What directions do you see opening up, especially that with the phase 3 trials of MDMA and psilocybin?
Yeah, great question, Jonathan. I think that as more and more medicines are researched and studied, and with the decriminalization, legalization movements across the country, in the next 5 or 10 years, we're going to see probably MDMA, a legal prescription medication, probably psilocybin, and then of course we already have ketamine And with more tools in the toolbox, we can kind of like customize treatments based on what's needed, you know? So like we've seen some pretty remarkable results with MDMA in treating trauma, and also with ketamine treating trauma, and different, they have very different signatures, but basically kind of do similar things in terms of, you know, helping to increase access to the inner healing intelligence, and to have a to work with underlying trauma, underlying emotional conflicts and patterns that that were not able to be accessed through, you know, normal talk therapy. And so I think that the future of psychedelic medicine will be that, you know, we'll have these different tools available. We can use different tools depending on what the patient's presenting, coming in with. We'll have more research on like the more specific indications of each of the medicine. Maybe there'll be work in combining medicines, not at the same time, maybe, but like at different phases of the session, different dose ranges. So, you know, there's just so much potential to explore and research. And
yeah, and I, you know, as well think about, you know, it is something what's new to the Western psychiatry and psychotherapy, but it's a way how people have been working, you know, in underground, but then before for thousands of years, using non-ordinary states of consciousness with medicine or other catalyst for personal, you know, emotional, physical healing, for community healing. And so as well, I have this hope of, you know, kind of more different communities coming together, really being, you know, able to see the variety of how these medicines are used within different communities, with different, you know, and there will be different models of working. And so there is this excitement, this possibility. And, you know, I think the caution is like, how can we do this in slow enough, you know, and really mindful and ethical way that we don't lose some of these guiding principles and something what has been, you know, kind of the kind of the center of working with these medicines. You know, it as well means like bringing in spirituality, because I don't think we can have, you know, people will have spiritual experiences with these medicines, and how do we relate to these? How do we integrate these? So that there is this enormous possibility of supporting people and development, and the way how we'll have to, you know, revision how we understand mental health or physical struggles, and what the healing path looks like. And you know, and so I'm so grateful for these and, you know, many conversations, so that there can be, you know, more information, that people understand more how these medicines can work in the psychotherapy, what are the risks, what are the benefits, and how the process looks. Because one thing we didn't mention is just as well that sometimes it you know, things get worse before they get better, that it's almost like this way of diving deep and kind of looking at things. And so that even changing that, you know, kind of a way, how do we measure the success, not just by symptom reduction, but maybe really looking at a change of quality in life.
Yeah, I love that. You mentioned ethics, and I just thought, what do you think is the role of touch in psychedelic-assisted psychotherapy? Because I know that can be a controversial topic, but can also be quite healing. And I think, you know, we can be, I'll just speak like as a clinician, there can be a fear of touching patients because of the whole, you know, layers of things that have happened. But I think people also hunger for touch. And then especially working with MDMA, people may really want that hand to hold or some kind of physical connection. So I just wonder what your thoughts on that were.
Great question, Jonathan.
Yeah, yeah, and then something I'm very interested in, Jonathan, and I know that there recently has been like kind of a upheaval on and talks about ethical violations and how to use touch, and I think it's so important to be able to work somatically with touch or without touch, and that oftentimes with touch, because it's people are coming to heal traumas trapped in the body, and sometimes that really people will use the support, and the therapeutic touch could be soothing and supportive, like holding the hand. But as well, it can be, supporting to process something difficult, the term we use is, unfinished motor movements. Like there might be things stuck in the body that couldn't have happened when the trauma happened. And then with the medicine, there is the opportunity to kind of release that and move through that. And sometimes touch can really be, a great support in that. So that my hope is that we'll be able to see more things written up on therapeutic touch in psychedelic sessions, more trainings, and maybe my belief is a little bit on that extreme side. And I think it's imperative that psychedelic therapists have training in somatic therapy and working with touch, and the consent process, and kind of really being clear, like why the touch is used for them and for the client, and that there is a consent to that, before any psychedelics taken in, and that, all the different types of touch are discussed, so that there is no surprise. And, and somebody might say, I don't want touch, and maybe they'll be like, can we use a pillow and put a pillow as a support? And then I put my hand on the pillow, and they might say yes, or they might say no. And, so of course that is the first and foremost, but I think it's so important.
So, me too. And then, thank you for that. That was a beautiful answer. I wonder also, Eric, I know you're very involved in the playlists, and you make these beautiful supportive playlists. And I think that has such an art to it. So I wanted to hear about your background in that, and how you create a supportive playlist, and maybe the difference between, say, a ketamine playlist versus, I don't even know if you use playlists in MDMA therapy.
Oh yeah, we use playlists in MDMA.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, and then they are different. Yeah. Thanks for the question, Jonathan. I think that music is an essential part of the psychedelic, should be an essential component of the psychedelic therapy session. And the act of listening to music and the process of kind of sinking into a more receptive state of mind is a great way to kind of enter into a journey. So that, I'll kind of like talk in prep sessions and kind of at the beginning of the experiential sessions of priming my patient to like, do some breathing exercises as the medicine effects are coming on, and really tuning into the music and allowing the music to kind of tell you its story and like take you on a journey. And so we're already so the music is kind of like and the breathing and the kind of meditative practices are a way of kind of like setting the stage and the foundation and almost like a bridge into non-ordinary states. So with ketamine, the playlists, we found that, ketamine slows down our perception of time and space, and so it's not the normal clock time. So you might, under the influence of ketamine, if you're listening to your favorite pop song that is kind of really based in kind of melody and a certain rhythm, it may not sound at all like it does in normal state of consciousness. It may sound, it's so actually slower tracks and more ambient tracks are more suited to the ketamine experience. And then there's a different arc of medicine effects to the ketamine experience as opposed to like MDMA. So with ketamine, the peak, the building and peak phase comes quite early in the experience, within 15 to 30 minutes, depending on the route of administration. So you come up kind of quite quickly, peak, and then there's a long tail, and so the track should be arranged in a way that supports that arc. And so with the peak of the medicine effects, you kind of want higher tempo, a little bit higher tempo tracks than the other tracks in the list. But again, with ketamine, it's not like they're not dance tracks. They're kind of more focused on like variations in different sounds and ambient nature sounds, but I don't sacrifice melody either. Melody is important, but it's just a different. It's different. So, and just in contrast with MDMA playlists, I do use kind of higher tempo house and trance tracks, and to really support a different arc of the medicine effects, and also a different signature. MDMA is phenethylamine, it's a stimulant, and so there's lots of other considerations to think about when you're creating a playlist. But I just the main purpose and goal of my playlist is to ultimately uplift the patient and kind of support patients having really opening, connecting with beauty. I think I would just say that I think a good playlist and good music provides the opportunity for someone to deepen into this appreciation of beauty. And I think the appreciation of beauty is really that's kind of that's the gold of the experience. And so I use music that's beautiful to me and that I resonate with, and I found that even if my patient has different tastes in music, that oftentimes they resonate too with the music that I'm resonating with, and so those are a few things I'd say about music. There's a lot more to say.
Connecting with beauty, I love that. I have to write
I
that
did
down.
too. That just resonated with me so much, and made me think about poetry too. A lot of uplifting poetry really seems to focus on beauty and the beauty of nature.
Well, Dave, I'm glad you said that. It's really the same kind of meditative state, whether you're listening to music or appreciating a beautiful piece of art or walking in nature, or that state of appreciation is very. It's a meditative state. It's a state of mindfulness. It's a state of being in the moment, where you can really truly appreciate something. When you're in the past or in the future, or you're have self-referential thinking, you're kind of or rumination. A lot of depressed patients find themselves ruminating a lot, and so you're not able to kind of sink in and appreciate and have gratitude for the beauty around you. So I think that's important.
Well, I'm thinking of a movie, and I can't remember which one, where a psychedelic state was used in reference to the dying process. And I wonder if that's anything that either of you have experienced to prepare people for death, or have thoughts about, or see it on the horizon.
Well, I think people do have experiences of of dying, and oftentimes it's their sense of self that is kind of dissipating, and they're connecting with this more expansive sense of self, or even a non-dual state of like no self, and connection with everything, as we see in the mystical state. And there's also neurological, physiological correlate to that, which is that under the influence of psychedelics, the default mode network, which is a series of brain regions that's responsible for our sense of self, and also our sense of being separate from others and from the world, that kind of goes offline, or is the activity in those areas are significantly reduced. And so, and that can be, it can be scary, because we're so conditioned that that sense of self is so reinforced by our experiences in this world, by cultural values around us, that you know, we're so kind of, I think, as a society, unbalanced towards the self-referential thinking, analytical mind, calculative mind, planning, that you know, when do we have the opportunity to enter into the more meditative? You know, it's like, well, these sessions can be that, you know, meditation retreats, listening to music, you know, there's ways that we can kind of reinforce a different way of being that's not focused on self-referential operations. But anyway, but to come back to your point, just that I think that's happening in the dying experience. The physical body isn't dying, but the sense of self is dissipating and changing, and perhaps that is what happens when we die. That we kind of transcend this kind of limited way of thinking of ourselves and move into this this vast expanse of no self. But the psychedelic experience can maybe simulate, you know, at higher doses of a medicine can stimulate that, and can provide an opportunity to work through the fear around death.
Looking at the clock here, it feels like maybe in terms of the rhythm of the interview that we're kind of coming on the end here. And I wonder if there's anything else that anybody wants to say to help wrap it up.
Well, not as a wrap up, but just as before the wrap up, I just had a quick curious question for Eric, because I know you're an identical twin, and that your twin is also a psychedelic therapist. And my younger brothers, they're fraternal twins, but you know, it's often thought that twins might have psychic connections, and they've certainly reported those moments. And I just wondered if you've ever had that with your twin, like in a psychedelic, non-ordinary state, where you've met somewhere on a plane somewhere.
Yeah, great. You know, I'm glad you asked that, Jonathan, because I, you know, in the LSD experience in my younger years that I referenced in the beginning, I remember a point, and I was with a friend, with two friends who were also tripping at the time, and I remember looking into their eyes at one point in the experience, and seeing that being a separate individual self was an illusion, and that we were actually the same being, or we came from the same source. And I remember thinking at the time, this is what I feel like with Jason, my brother. This I know this feeling. You know, this is sharing consciousness. So I think that's significant. There's something about the mystical experience, the kind of merging that can happen. there's elements of that in twinship, I think. But and I would also say that, you know, we didn't commonly have telepathic communication when we were growing up, in terms of like being able to read each other's thoughts. But there was an emotional resonance that we had that I often could tell what my brother was feeling without him saying anything. And so there's something there, I think, that's special, that can be special in twinship, that can also inform, you know, it's kind of a very mild, non-ordinary state of consciousness, perhaps, where you're kind of merged with the other. And I think that influenced my interest in psychedelics and Jason's interest in psychedelics.
Thank you.
Wow. That would open up a whole nother realm of discussion.
I know we talked about the future of psychedelic-assisted therapy, but what do you see as the future for Polaris Insight Center? For both of you.
Yeah, you know, so it's really just, I'm so able to do and working with the colleagues that I love so much. And, it's kind of like looking at my very busy calendar, and everything is connected to psychedelics. And so it's just like such a, you know, few years ago, unimaginable thing. And a colleague of mine was kind of appreciating days ago. And I was like, you're right, you know, kind of, it's just feeling so, and, you know, I back to where and how continue to stay connected to the values that we have, even with this kind of big expansions that are happening, and hope to bring for patients if the clinical end in a way that MDMA is going to be rescheduled, and continuing to you know, do trainings and you know, there's something about being in the present and seeing how things are unfolding. So kind of curious what the future holds, and yeah, grateful for your support, and it was, you know, great to be here and chat with all of you on Monday morning. Eric.
Yeah, thanks, Veronika. I'll just add to that. I think just training, really our focus now is on training, and just training more and more clinicians to be able to offer this medicine and expand access. And then, yeah, we want to be able to offer MDMA through Polaris, and offer potentially MDMA trainings. Eventually, we've been training through MAPS to do in the MAPS MDMA training. And then, yeah, bringing in psilocybin, perhaps, and getting training in that. And so again, would love to have more tools in the toolbox to provide even more effective treatments.
Okay, I think maybe this is a good place for us to wrap it up. And Jonathan, I really want to thank you for your presence on this, and for bringing Eric and Veronika to my attention, and hopefully to the world attention.
Yeah.
And,
yeah, I'm so grateful I could join.
Yeah, me too. So Veronika and Eric, I want to thank you for being our guests today on Shrink Wrap Radio.